There is power in a place. The cemetery where your grandmother is buried feels existentially different from your local Whole Foods. Being somewhere meaningful often provokes a deeply emotional response in me. I've experienced this while doing things like walking through the woods behind my childhood home or visiting the demolished remains of the publishing house my parents once worked at. This sense of a space enveloped by spirituality does not just come from a feeling of nostalgia, however, as I've encountered it abroad even more than at home. One of the first instances of this occurred at a church in Nazareth while I was traveling with Tabga Tours in the summer of 2017. A tangible chill danced up my spine the moment I stepped through its threshold. The atmosphere surrounding me flipped like a light switch, and it was as if a type of spiritual interference began to fade away. Visiting the church felt like bathing in an oasis of tranquility, a truly dramatic experience I still remember vividly to this day. In no way am I trying to argue that God was objectively more present or spiritually attentive within the walls of that building. It was a highly personal experience, and I cannot guarantee the same sensation if you were to visit that church yourself. For me, though, it felt genuinely easier to connect with and sense His presence while immersed in that location. Another time I experienced this was during a study tour with my university, traveling to England and Wales over the course of about 2 weeks. Near the end of the trip, we were scheduled to visit the ruins of a medieval monastery called Tintern Abbey. I had seen a number of ancient buildings by this point, so my expectations for this one in particular were high but reasonably measured. Upon our arrival, however, I was immediately floored by the profound beauty and scale of this monument. I stood outside the church in awe for so long that my friend Caleb returned to find me, inviting me to see the remains of the abbey from inside. The full-bodied wonder struck me like a ton of bricks, and I felt delirious with amazement as I soaked up the scene. Ancient stone walls towered above me, framing a brilliant blue sky where the roof once rested. Clouds like cotton passed by the ornate Gothic windows, the glass having long since vanished. Lush grass speckled with delicate white flowers carpeted the floor, the surrounding green hills being visible from any angle. It was marvelous to every extent of the word, and I was literally brought to tears by the event. Again, I was overwhelmed by a feeling of irrefutable divinity. It was like there was a fragment of heaven buried somewhere under my feet. For over a millennium, God had been gently sculpting this masterpiece. Now, here I was to see it. I have never been more certain of my faith than in that moment. It was a life-changing experience, and I yearn for everyone to encounter something similar. Some places, whether far or familiar, exotic or mundane, seem to have a special proximity to a higher power. The Bible describes Jesus going to specific locations to commune with God. He often chose places where he could be alone, notably rich in natural beauty. One example of this comes in Luke 6:12, when Jesus was descending upon his 12 disciples. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. NIV. Another instance occurs in Matthew 26 at the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus sought a solitary place to find support from God. Thin places. I am decidedly not alone in the belief that some places are more spiritually significant than others, as the term thin places was initially coined by the ancient Celts to describe this very concept. According to one of their sayings, heaven and earth are only 3 feet apart, but in thin places that distance is even shorter. Later, Christians adopted this terminology as well, using it to reference locations where people tend to feel peace and presence from God. This is what I hope can apply to all Christians on our spiritual journey. Finding a physical place that resonates with you may help His presence feel more accessible. You don't have to trek halfway across the world to do it either, as God seems to show up any place at any time. I encourage you to go somewhere within your ability, whether it be a Himalayan mountaintop or the pond behind your local 7-Eleven. If this helps you feel more connected to God, or strengthens your spiritual fortitude in any way, I would argue your journey was absolutely worth it. If not, well, you can get a slushie on the way back.